Unakitia mai mātou, o pononga I tēnei wā, e mahi nei I a mātou mahi, mo te painga o ngā tangata o te kaunihira o ngā roto o Rotorua. Takua mai kia tau te rangi Mārie, ki runga I a mātou I ngā wā katoa. Ko ihu karaiti, hoki tō mātou ariki. Amene.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Now we call for apologies. I'll move Councillor Rokawa-Tate and Councillor Tapsell for lateness. A seconder. Councillor Donaldson. He's a full apology, is he? Certainly. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Any declarations of interest? There appear to be none. Any urgent items not on the agenda? Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's with regard to the amount of investment that this council has put into Waipa, Longmire Road, Forest Hub 2 and the lakefront. Has the staff worked out a budget for the maintenance, cleaning and servicing of these investments that this council has done? Well, remembering that it's got to be done in perpetuity.
I rule that out of order. Councillor Bentley, of course, in our long-term plan, those costs are factored in, and you were a councillor when we signed that long-term plan off, and that signalled the long-term investments. It's not an urgent item. We'll now move on. Are there any other urgent items? There appear to be none. Thank you for signalling. We moved lateness. Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. We move now to the following recommendations of the Operations and Monitoring Committee meeting held on the 5th of November to be adopted, and we'll take them one by one. Recommendation 1. Oh, I've moved on. Yep. Sorry. The council minutes of the 29th of October. I ask for a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 29th of October be confirmed as a true and accurate record. Moved Councillor Wang, seconded Councillor McPherson. All those in favour? Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Worship. Can I just ask for a question regarding point 5 of recommendation 1 of SPNF? It's on the bottom of page 7, and it was to do with the council making a request to DIA. Has that request been made, and will that be brought back to a subsequent committee? Because I see one of the large gaming trusts active in our rohi just put a pānui out the other day on all of their grants. So I just wondered if we could be brought up to speed on that.
I'll have to research that.
So the CE will research that and get back to us on that. Are there any other items from the minutes? There appear to be none.
Sorry, Chair.
Certainly. So we'll
Chair.
move the minutes. Yes.
Chair, sorry, just a clarification on we're talking here about the minutes of the council meeting held Thursday 29th. I've got a question pertaining to, on page 8, whether it was further resolved that the council delegate to a hearings panel various powers should a minister come back. In the case where a minister comes back and asks for elected members' advice, will that overrule this resolution?
Could you speak to that, please, Jeff, just for clarity on, we haven't yet received the minister's response. I think we're trying to hypothesise without knowing what the minister's going to respond, how the minister's going to respond. JP? Do you have an answer?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just my expectation would be if the Commissioner has any questions, the first point of call will be to those Commissioners. under the fast track plan change provisions.
Yep.
We were an applicant, so the council put forward the plan change. So they wouldn't necessarily come to us unless they were intending to come back to talk to everyone who'd been involved in that plan change and potentially the submitters. So my expectations, if they wanted clarification, it would be through the commissioners.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other items relating to the minutes? So I'll now put the minutes of the council meeting held on the 29th of October 2020 be confirmed as a true and accurate record. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. Before we move to recommendations from other committees, the CEO wants to signal.
Yes, through the Mayor, I'd just like to signal that just before the meeting, a technical matter has been raised with regards to the paper on SNAs, and given the advice that we've just received, we would like to withdraw this paper from the agenda with a view of actually placing it onto the next available agenda with some corrections being made.
You don't have to seek approval. I make that ruling that is absolutely appropriate to get the technical detail corrected. I support that move. We move now to the recommendations from other committees. Yes.
With regard to that previous SNAs, just from my own understanding, are the areas to be cleared SNAs, are they non-rateable?
Councillor Bentley, I think as we're going to get the technical details sorted, and back that would be the time to debate that fully and question further. There are quite a few questions around, I understand, so let's wait for the response to the technical matter. It might answer everybody's concerns. We move on now to the following recommendations of the Operations and Monitoring Committee meeting held on the 5th of November. Recommendation 1, the Margarita Street Traffic Management and Road Safety Improvement Engagement Feedback Report. And the recommendation is that Council agree to the implementation of a modification of the status quo option, i.e. the addition of formal pedestrian crossing facilities to improve the safety for those who use alternate modes to cross Margarita Street, and some more positive carriageway narrowing and signage. Do I have a mover to receive the recommendation? Councillor Yates, seconded. Councillor Tapsell. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Thank you, Stavros. You're going to speak to this and answer questions.
Morena Tatu katoa, Your Worship, through you. Hilda, can we put point on the table? Your Worship, through you and to all elected members, just a few points I would like to make. I'll take the report as read into your agenda. Just a quick refresher, I suppose, of the background to that. We spoke earlier that the Margarita Street it's got a mixed use of residential and business activities over there for a number of years, and the residential development has, and especially in the recent times, have almost fully completed, which means more residents in the area. About a year ago, residents in the retirement villages over there requested that we attend a meeting with them where they've raised concerns about the volume, type of traffic, safety considerations. And they put on the table a request that the road has been closed to through traffic. While we listen to those issues, we have advised the residents that road closure, as anticipated by them, was not viable without seeking community input into that process. I would like to remind Council that Council does not have to consult on any matters relating to roads. Under the Local Government Act, Section 319, you are a local controlling authority, and you have a range of powers on roads. You can close, modify, adjust, rectify any road without consultation at your discretion. However, the Council agreed to undertake a public feedback exercise on potential options to address some of the issues that the residents have raised. The public engagement feedback highlighted additional issues such as business risks, accessibility to premises, road user safety, and again to remind ourselves that that small section of road, which is not significant, experienced some 12 vehicle crashes in recent years, which for the section of the road is quite significant. And also in 2012, Council improved the intersection between Margarita Street and Fenton Street by installing a roundabout there. And again, that intersection used to be a significant source of accidents and crashes, and that roundabout intervention improved the overall traffic situation. Now, after a consultation or feedback and engagement would include online feedback, letters, submissions, public meetings, and so on, officers a report sought to reconcile all the feedback and make some balanced recommendations, and of course informed by the feedback received. It is our view that in going to seek public feedback for any particular proposal, you go with an open mind, and the whole idea behind that feedback is to maintain the perspective that if you hear things that that make you change the initial consideration for the options, then in due consideration you can make some adjustments to that. Our recommendation remains as per the report, as you can see on the screen. It is, I believe, a sensible and balanced intervention where accessibility to local destinations is preserved without restricting traffic movements, while an improvement to vulnerable road users is attained. I think overall we're aware that some comments have been made that the road will be blocked or was going to be chicanes or things like that. What you see in front of you basically it's an improvement to an opportunity for vulnerable road users to cross a road through on a former pedestrian crossing. And what people call Quebec Stations basically are buffer zones between the active traffic lanes and the space between the curb and the edge of an active traffic lane. And again, the idea behind that is that it creates for residents who enter and exit our properties there a little bit of buffer zone before they enter into a live active lane. So that is the recommendation. Our report remains as it is, and more than happy to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just two questions, Stavros. So while the road controlling authority is under no obligation to consult on a safety intervention on a local road, are we still guided by the national policy statement for road safety issued by the government? That's one question. And just looking at the scheme, the graphic you've got there, will it also include letdowns for mobility impaired? So those on scooters and electric chairs, that sort of thing.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A response to your first question. Everything we do in our routing network space that attracts NZTA subsidy, that is about 56% for our district. It requires us to have an integrated transport strategy that gives priority to road safety. So that is, this is paramount. It is, road safety is one of the most important elements of NZTA consideration before they issue the funding assistance, to the council. Safety, mode shifts, multiple choices of traveling, and so on. These are important elements in the funding considerations. Second question, look, don't get misled by this. This is a mock-up. It's a concept. There will be modifications to access, pedestrian crossing with, people with disability issues, accessibility issues. The ramps on either side, of those, of buffer zones will be modified to allow cyclists to go over them. So it's just to give an indication that the pedestrian crossing, what we propose to do there, do not intrude into the active traffic lanes. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Tēnā koe, Stavros, thank you for this. Can I just get clarification, because the recommendation that's here is inclusive of the recommendation number 1, but we have had an amendment put in there. Can you please explain that a little bit further for me, please?
Yeah, Councillor Yates, as I said at the beginning, when we came to Council in February and we said we have these concerns by the local residents, we'll draft an engagement methodology to go and talk to affected parties, not just the local people, but other people who actually travel through and to that area for many reasons, to have an engagement process. The initial options were to do nothing, absolutely nothing, status quo, as it's called. The other one is to introduce active traffic interventions, which included chicanes or speed humps, or restricting, the road, carriageway. And the whole idea behind those sort of things is to make it unattractive for traffic to go through and force or compel traffic to an alternative route. And the third option is actually to do a bit of a cul-de-sac type of concept, halfway through that road by the vet clinic, so people cannot travel through. Now, the feedback indicated that, closing the roads, option 3 is unacceptable. Option 2 also, we got a good feedback from the businesses in that area and truck companies that, actually introducing chicanes and speed humps would be detrimental to accessibility, and obviously will cause different kind of issues in terms of braking and additional vibrations to the residential properties. At the same time, in public meetings, we heard that people had, in consideration of the extensive traffic and increasing volume of heavy traffic in that area, they face difficulty crossing safely that road, and they requested improvements to the crossing facilities. And therefore, we came back to you in November, and we said, well, the status quo, which means do nothing, it's really sort of not advisable. We suggest to do a modification to the status quo, which is what you see in front of you there.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My concern is, as it's drawn there, Stavros, is that it's going to be fairly hazardous for any road cyclists, and that they would have to veer into the carriageway if they were to try and avoid these chicanes, I suppose you'd call them. So therefore I wouldn't be voting in favour of this.
Councillor Bentley, I refer you to the response I gave to Councillor David Mayor MacDonald. What you see in front of you, it's a mock-up, it's a concept. In designing that, there would be the appropriate design to allow cyclists to ride over those Quebec Stations or behind them, so they don't go into the active traffic lane. This is just a concept to indicate that the interventions are really restricted outside the active traffic lanes.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Stavros, thank you for this report. What are the costs of these suggested changes to the status quo?
Councillor McPherson, I don't have the accurate cost because obviously you have not agreed to that yet, but I will give you a rough indication is that it would be in the region of $20,000. Can I remind you though that in everything you do as a governance body, especially invest in your roads, safety and road mode shifts, you are guided by NZTA standards which place a benefit cost ratio into safety. A fatality is worth $4.5 million, and a major injury is $750,000, with a light injury of $300,000 as a social cost. So in the context of preserving or preventing even a light injury, I would imagine the PCR for that being in the region of 30.
Thank you. Supplementary. Thank you. The second question concerns the pedestrian crossing itself. Given that on the other side from Glen Bray, there is no shared pathway down there. I wondered, what is the purpose of the pedestrian crossing?
Councillor McPherson, I said earlier, and I said in my earlier report too, is that the exact location of the pedestrian crossing is still yet to be identified. And if we're going to put it in any particular location, which will be put in a particular location, the footpath will be extended to join the pedestrian crossing.
Another supplementary?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I have before me a copy of the letter from James McDougall through Holland Beckett Lawyers, essentially asking under Lagoima that they be provided with a great deal more information about these proposals. Would it be beneficial for Council to pause and to have access to the answers provided to that Lagoima before we make a decision?
Councillor McPherson, you are a councillor. I'm making a report. It's your decision.
Thank you for that.
My question to you, Stavros, is what do you call that intervention there? Just because we're all learning about, as we adapt, and safety, this is probably going to be used as a method in other roads as we learn. What's it called other than a pedestrian crossing with wings?
Well, it's a safety improvement, Your Worship.
Just a safety improvement. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Kumar, and then Councillor Kaupon.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Stavros. I think Reynolds touched on something I wanted to talk about. Contrary to the fact that the council has the powers, we did go for feedback. I believe now that there could be a legal challenge. Just wanted to know what the ramifications were if there was, but I think Reynolds has touched on it, so he's somewhat requested that we get a little bit more time so we could understand. I just wanted to know what repercussions there could be if we did go ahead and head this.
I'm going to rule that out of order. I heard very clearly from our infrastructure engineer, we made the political decision, given the evidence before us in committee. That's the time. Then if there is a challenge, that's the next step. But we're politicians elected to make decisions on behalf of the best interest in a balanced way to issues that come before us. So it's not for a council officer to answer. Would you like to speak to comments?
Look, Council, if I can make a couple of comments that I hope may be of assistance. Firstly, the topic of consultation and the method of consultation here, there was I think Councillor Yates was actually questioned, was hidden behind it, is that there were some options that were put out for consideration. This isn't in any way can be considered as a referendum. You're not putting out referendum options that one of which is going to be chosen and implemented. What you were doing was actually putting out some options which people could look at, provide feedback on for your consideration. What has come back is effectively in the report a view that there is the need to keep this road open and to continue to have access through Margarita Street. However, that just retaining the status quo, what you've received is professional advice from our engineer that says that there are some issues on this road, and he points quite correctly to the accident record that has actually been seen on this stretch of roadway. What he's also advising is that there are some options with regards to the treatments, and this is just a mock-up of those, whereby implementing treatments such as this, there is the option of actually addressing some of the safety issues that do exist on this roadway. The precise nature of that intervention will be subject to professional advice and scrutiny and design. But that is actually not yet actually completed. So effectively what you're looking at is saying you are wishing to keep the roadway open, but note that there is the need for some additional safety improvements, such of similar ilk to what has actually been put forward here, that in our engineers' view will actually address some of the safety concerns that actually are real and evident on this stretch of road, and he has actually referenced back to the accident records on the road that is actually in question. So you can see this is not a matter of getting to a point of saying, here is the detailed design and we are now passing the detailed design. What we're in fact doing is providing you with the option, which is keep Margarita Street open. Note that there is a accident history here on Margarita Street, and that there are a series of options which will improve the safety record, and is therefore asking you to pass the resolution to allow that detailed design work to be done, noting that this is the nature of that detailed design and what's been intended.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor, Kai Fong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Stavros, the original rationale for the residents coming to the council was their concern around the parking of the trucks, waiting for COFs at the VTNZ, noise and vibration, which is actually referred to in the petition in the documents that we have.
That was one of them.
It seemed to be that was the major rationale, and that the options that were then put up for...
No, Councillor Kaifong, the residents had a very strong view that the increasing heavy traffic going towards the commercial industrial part of the roads created loss of amenity, for the residential values. That was one of them, but it was the flow of heavy traffic that was causing them problems.
So the issue is volume. So you mentioned it's the issue of volume and type, as well as what they were concerned about in terms of noise, vibration and parking. So the suggestion here, and forgetting the safety issues, and I know safety is still important, but what we're looking at here is we're trying to address a problem that the residents had originally, but we're also trying to balance the needs of both the commercial sector at one end of Margarita Street, as well as the residents at the other end, and also the general public who use this area to bypass from east to west and vice versa. So the solutions that have been suggested there are not really addressing the original concerns.
Councillor Kaifong, that reflects a good line of approach. However, can I remind or reiterate a couple of things? The residents, solution was to close the road through traffic. We advise that closing the road through traffic could have significant potential impacts on other affected parties. That's why you undertook, the feedback. We had the public meetings, we had engagement, and the business sector and the general public advised that they object to the closure of the road simply because there would be significant adverse economic impacts, accessibility impact, and so on. As officers, we have to also recognize that the fact on the ground is that there's an increasing volume of traffic using that road. Residents and other general public express concerns that crossing that road with increasing volume of traffic is becoming problematic in terms of safety. And therefore, on balance, considering the economic effects and impacts of closing the roads, considering the volume of traffic there, and considering the increasing safety risk of the public, we have opted to address at least one area where we believe it's viable to be done, i.e. increasing the safety, improving safety of people who want to cross that road. And Some people made a suggestion that the speed is not high in that area, and that's correct. Only 15% of the traffic in that area exceeds the speed limit. But I will argue, as the chief engineer for this organization, that if you are a vulnerable flesh and blood person being hit by a 40-ton truck, whether they travel at 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers an hour, really your chances are minuscule. So therefore, a safe pedestrian crossing will give a vulnerable road user an opportunity to cross safely and raise the alertness and awareness of heavy traffic and general traffic that might be the case. It goes some way, at least, towards improving the overall safety environment in the particular street. Would not address the issue of volume of the traffic or the type of traffic, because we have considered and recommended that the adverse economic effects of closing the road are too significant to contemplate in the report. But we believe we can improve roads as user safety by these interventions.
Can I have a question? Sorry, I'm not concerned about the pedestrian crossing, but obviously before we went out for consultation, you knew there was going to be some concern that closing the road wasn't really going to be a viable option. And so when we went to consultation, there were 3 options that were put up, which were leave it as is. The second option was to provide lane narrowing with chicanes and reducing speed and addressing the volume with those roading interventions. And the third one was the ability to, removing the ability to traverse that section of Margarita Street altogether. What we now have is, instead of option 1, which was keep the road as is we have an option 1 with option 2. Instead of it now being narrowing the laneway, we're now narrowing the carriageway, but in effect we are still narrowing the opportunity for traffic to pass through that area.
Councillor Stavros, to answer, I heard the officer tell us that we went out with an open mind. You suggested that we went out thinking we would close the road.
No, what I'm suggesting, Madam Mayor, is that we went out with 3 options for consultation, and I'm just simply reading the 3 options that went out for public consultation.
Right.
And those were the options that were given to people when they were asked to give feedback. Which option do you propose, 1, 2 or 3? And the overwhelming majority came back with option 1, which was to keep the road as is. So that's why I'm asking, when we're now saying that we are proposing a recommendation which is not option 1, it is actually option 1 with quite a few elements of option 2 which were not acceptable in terms of the feedback.
And the time for the amendment and debate on what we went out with and what the engineers recommended to us was at committee time. Today is a time for questioning, not the process, just questioning. Have, just as you have, but you can't go back to relitigate the debate on what the options were and how they've changed. But the officer may have a perfectly valid answer. It always changes.
Well, I think what we have is...
It's never pure.
Well, perhaps if Stavros, in terms of the...
Look, I think that her worship, broadly addressed what I wanted to say, but I think what I would like to correct you is that you are saying that we're narrowing the road. The trafficable live lanes are, as you see in front of you there, they would not be restricted in any way. Those lanes are at least, from memory, 3.5 meters each. 3.5 meters, each. It allows any type of traffic to go through that. So in no way it obstructs or restricts the road traffic. The buffer zone between the active lane and the curb really it's really a parking space. So if you have a vehicle park there, it's not illegal to park there. So, but as long as it doesn't obstruct the traffic lane, so there's no difference in what is happening at the moment. It just reinforces that instead of a road marking, you've got some curb blocks which basically gives some physical evidence. If you're going to install a pedestrian crossing there, you need to give people a decent opportunity to cross a road at the narrowest possible time. So I think from the technical perspective, I stand by my recommendation. Now, if you believe that the feedback from the public is says do nothing, is literal do nothing, well, that's your decision. You can make a call on voting.
Can I just ask one supplementary question around that diagram?
Yes.
Have the road markings been altered on Margarita Street? Because it looks like there are the lines have been.
The road markings were remarked in recent times, and they were remarked at the. I think this is from Google Map actually. That picture there, which has been mocked up, to show that, and the what you call the shadow markings there, just is a markings that as they were in terms of the standard width lanes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor. Yes.
Councillor Kaifong, if I can just make an additional comment. Since the debate, I did a little bit of research myself because this is not my area of expertise either. What I think there's been a little bit of a confusion on is that the option of chicanes has somehow been seen as being taken and been implemented here. That's not the case. What's implemented here is the curb extensions, which are a well-recognised and established road treatment for safety. And it's a situation, I think, that I can only best explain by the fact that if you're driving down a road which has got cars on either side of it parked, as opposed to the same road with no traffic parked, you're likely to drive in a different fashion. So when you're actually driving down the road with vehicles parked on each side of it, it's likely that the driver will be more aware, as opposed to a road which is totally open on either side of it. The likelihood of that same level of awareness is lower. So what the curb extensions effectively do is to promote that level of driver awareness, which is hence promoting safety, and that's why the intervention's been proposed.
Could I just ask the Chief Executive just one question in response to that then?
It's usually the officer that you direct questions to. He's not in the chair.
Sorry, it was just in response to the comment. Well, then if I just make the comment then that if we're trying to raise awareness or perception, then more signage or different kind of signage may have the same impact but without impacting the carriageway or the laneway.
Do you want to answer that technical question? I see signage in the recommendation.
Obviously, Councillor Kaifong has a technical answer. My answer is not.
Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to signal I wanted to make a comment. I'm not sure if now's appropriate time.
We'll get to comments. We'll finish questions, and thank you for signalling. I want to make a comment too. Any more questions? Right. So now we're open for comment. Councillor Tapsell and Councillor.
Oh, well, I do have a very small question then. My question, Stavros, is my understanding is a pedestrian crossing. Does a pedestrian crossing require those, what do we call them, the chicades to come out anyway? So regardless, we will have chicades on the road. And I ask this question with the understanding and the foundation of our number one job as councillors is to ensure the safety of our community by providing quality infrastructure. It's quite clear that we are voting on the status quo. We had a significant amount of consultation on this, actually a lot more than we normally would, because as you said, we do already hold the authority to make any decisions on roading issues here for the council. So I just asked that question around the safety because for me, we would feel pretty silly if someone was to be hurt crossing this road or biking on this road and we didn't want to make a $20,000 decision, if that, to make this a safer area. It was quite clear in the consultation that while we couldn't close the road, that wasn't feasible, we could, through the recommendations of the experts and engineers, be able to provide, at a cost-effective manner, a safer road crossing and community for our citizens. And I think that's what we just need to remember as councillors. We are making a decision with our democratic right we've been elected to do. And as I said, our number one job is to ensure the safety of our community.
Thank you,
Councillor
Councillor Tapp. So the answer is yes. In installing a pedestrian crossing, especially in the circumstances in front of you there where there is ability to park on either side of the crossing, you do, as a matter of good technical standard, put the aprons to bring the pedestrian, what you call the concrete cap extensions, we call them aprons, okay? So people can come in front to the edge of the traffic lane, have good visibility of traffic, and traffic have good visibility of them. So, and that is a standard, installation.
Councillor Donaldson, did you have a question, or are you signalling to move?
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have a question which was answered by the Chief Executive, I think, and it was respect of those wings in the distance beyond the wheelie bin, which is part and parcel of creating that awareness of an upcoming pedestrian crossing. But I do signal that I'm happy to move recommendation 1 and just make a comment that I agree with the comments of Councillor Tapsell. It's, while it might be a $25,000 intervention in the interests of improved safety on the road without impeding the flow of vehicular traffic, 56% of that comes from Waka Kotahi as a subsidy. So it's a pretty small cost to help safety, and those wings are there designed for those people on the access or disability, people in wheelchairs, etc., to pause before they see the traffic slow and cross. So I'm happy to support.
And I wish to signal that I'll second the motion. Do you have a further question? Well, speaking to the motion, yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I supported the motion because of the main reasons expressed by our engineer, chief engineer, on the safety aspects, because some of us may recall some years ago we had an even bigger problem at the top end of Sunset Road, where cars were actually going too fast and were going over the edge and down to some houses down below, and wanted to put in some safety measures, and a chicane was put up there, more with barriers and everything, and winding, and it was for safety reasons, and it solved the problem up there. But another concern that's just arisen from this, and for me, is any decision we make at standing committee meetings and that, and we get letters from lawyers, and some people want to delay it from that, I think that's more of a bit of a concern for me. Thank you. Supporting the motion.
So, Councillor, you speaking to the motion? Yeah.
It's to ask another question, if I can. It's been raised, and I'd like, it could be the engineer's, Stavros's area, it might be the chief executive, but what are the legal consequences of us pressing ahead and making a decision in the light of the issues, technical and other issues, raised in this letter from Holland Beckett? Has adequate account been taken of the issues that have been raised in that letter, and what could be the consequences of setting that letter aside and moving ahead to make a decision today? Thank you.
Councillor, I think what the letter raises is a question around process, and the powers for you to act have already been outlined by the Chief Engineer under the Local Government Act. You're not obliged, in fact, at all to consult with respect to the treatment on decisions around roading. On this matter, you have elected to go out to the community and to seek community's views. As I've said before, this was not a referendum, and so the options that were put out, you were not bound to actually implement precisely those options. What you were bound to do was to listen with an open mind as to the public's views on this section of road. You've done that, and you've heard the views that have actually been put forward, and you have made a different decision with respect to ultimately what is actually needed in this situation, which is precisely what is required for good consultation, to actually listen, then to formulate an option that responds in the best way possible to a balanced option which takes into account as much as possible of the views that you've heard. So all of those criteria, in my view, have been met. I haven't heard technical arguments with respect to this roading treatment at all that require additional information to be put before you.
Right.
Parliamentary, if I might. The question simply is, have you taken legal advice on the implications of this letter? Thank you.
Putting that out of order, we are now, as elected members today, faced with making a decision, voting on a recommendation that we debated at some length in committee. What has happened since, we take into account in how you vote today, but it's not for us to second guess a future as a result of our recommendation and vote today. A question, Councillor Kuma? No. Oh, you can comment on the motion.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I won't be supporting this motion simply because my understanding of the feedback was completely different. And from the way I see it, it's not about the cost. The cost could be $100,000 if it meant it was safer for everybody, the cyclists, and casual cyclists as well. Then I would support it, but I can't see it. I see chicanes and the big trucks that are going through there in the narrow road that it's going to be as probably more of an hazard than life-saving. So, yeah, based on those things and what I can see now, already it's a very congested road. I don't think I'll be supporting this motion.
Councillor Yates.
And thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I would like to indicate that I will support this motion, and everything that has been said has clearly been articulated, that this is purely an image of a mock-up of what could be a possibility on one of our concerning roadways that carry some of my dear friends. Some of my dear friends actually live down the street. So I understand that whilst we might be talking about safety, we're also talking about the lives of members of our community. I do hope, and I will be expecting to see opportunities for cyclists to ride through that carriageway safely, and I also will be expecting, as it's my right as a councillor, to ensure that wherever that pedestrian is placed in a position that is most effective for all community members of that particular road, including businesses. I can't see it obstructing other trucks. If we were to consider and visualise a car being parked on the side of the road, that's my final comment. Kia ora.
And I, having seconded the motion, wish to speak to it, and I think we've got confused. And I want to congratulate the residents of Glenbrae who brought this subject to us in the right way. They brought it to us and asked us to go to a public meeting, and we have to remind ourselves it was because of a death, and that was of great concern to the residents. So safety was also an incredible strength that they put to the chief engineer and myself at a meeting with Glenbrae. From there, we went beyond, as Stavros has told us, we went beyond what we have to do. What a wonderful opportunity when you receive a petition to actually go out and ask the residents, the community and the business community their views based on some options. Nothing is ever as it goes out for consultation. We get a wonderful opportunity to improve a safety intervention and express the interests on balance of what we heard both at the meeting at Glenbrae and other public meetings that councillors availed themselves on. And then we take technical advice from the experts. We are not engineering experts, and we must be very careful. I've heard we're even confused about what it's called, and it's not a chicane, I've heard. So I think in the interests we've made, if this passes, we've made the right political decision on a stretch of road that we didn't have to go out and consult on at all. And nothing is binding when you look at the numbers in terms of responses. Those that are happy don't bother responding. So you can't take it. It was never a binding referendum. It was consultation. Ask the public. That added to the costs of council. But what a good thing if we prevent another death on this road. And I don't want that on my watch when we've got an opportunity before us today to actually improve public safety and keep the road open. And I do believe, hearing from yourselves, Councillor Bentley and Councillor Kumar, about cyclists, I'm sure that'll be factored in too in whatever comes back to us. So I'm very confident that the officers have heard our collective concerns, and what will come back will reflect that. So I certainly will be supporting the motion as was appropriately amended at committee. So does anyone else wish to speak to it? Yes, Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to say I would be supporting the motion, and it's with safety of our people in mind. It's and I think, you know, as it's been mentioned so many times, these aren't chicanes. It's, you know, what we have on Sophia Street, what we have on Sunset Road, those are chicanes. What we have here on Margarita Street, clearly, you know, it does not have any resemblance to a chicane. It's a curb extension. And but I hope you allow me just one question. With the neighbouring Sala Street and Tenai Road, with the roadworks going on over there right now, how would the traffic management be made to, you know, accommodate those issues? Because that's one of the concerns of the public, that congestion. You know, that one of the top issues on their mind was congestion.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Wang. I mean, the works on Sala and Tenai roads primarily causing some diversion of heavy traffic, which we made arrangements with the ZTA to actually reroute them through Tenai Road and T Street instead of through Margareta Street. Nevertheless, those works on the intersection of Sala and Tenai will be concluded within the next few days, and that will be eliminated there too. But this is not major construction activity. It's just road markings and some apron curbs that will be done at a time that is not really in conflict with any other major activities yet. So we'll synchronize and time that will not have any adverse effects. Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
So this is my comment through you, Chair, concerning this issue. The first one is has been highlighted by others, the logical connections between the problems, the specification of problem, and the proposed solutions are, in my view, quite vague. The pedestrian crossing appears to be a crossing to nowhere, and I suspect it's using as an argumentative device, emphasising safety to carry through an argument for traffic modification. And I would suggest that safety concerns can be addressed by better signage. My biggest concern, though, is the legal challenge, which has been swept aside in the discussion. And in my view, it represents public views that really need to be taken seriously and respected.
Point of order,
and
Your
it's
Worship.
simple that I
Point of order.
address that.
Stop, Councillor McPherson, there is a point of order.
Yeah, I would raise a point of order on relevance of the issue of the legal challenge. As has already been explained by the Chief Executive, that is not relevant to the decision we're making today. If it was an injunction, it might be a different story. But it's a letter indicating there could be a future challenge, and any decision of council can be challenged. So I don't believe that is relevant to the decision we're making today.
My ruling is that I rule that out of order, that comment, and uphold your challenge.
In that case, I've got no alternative now other than to oppose this motion. Thank you very much.
Right. There appear to be no more questions. Councillor Donaldson, you've got the right of reply you don't wish to have a right of reply. Go to a vote. I'm now going to put the vote that Council agree to the implementation of modification of the status quo option, i.e. the addition of formal pedestrian crossing facilities to improve the safety for those who use alternative modes to cross Margarita Street, and some more positive carriageway narrowing and signage. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary?
Vote.
Do you wish for your vote to be recorded? All those in favour, raise your hands. Against? The motion is carried. We move now to the... Thank you, Stavros. We move now to the report of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting on the 12th of November. A mover and a seconder, please, to accept the report. Oh, we've accepted it. Right. We just have a motion on the table that the following recommendations of this... Oh, sorry, I've jumped. That Council agree to accept the non-financial performance management framework for inclusion into the annual report following the final audit of the results to be undertaken by Audit New Zealand. Moved Councillor Yates, seconded Councillor Tapsell. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. Now, move to the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting on the 12th of November. A mover to receive the report of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting on the 12th of November be received. Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Maxwell. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. A mover and a seconder that the following recommendations of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee held on the 12th of November be adopted. A mover will take recommendation 1 first, that the Tarawera Wastewater Reticulation Scheme, you want it as read rather than me read it? You happy about that? Certainly. Do I have a mover? Councillor Yates, seconded Councillor Wang. Are there any questions? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chair. The second of the two recommendations, the Council agrees to instruct officers to commence the process. Content with that. Does this statement, this motion here, imply that the costs, once this project is budgeted, will be automatically embedded in the LTP and annual plan for 2020-21 year? My concern here is that if it's an automatic addition to the budget, proposed budget, there is no comparative analysis of the relative value of this project compared to other candidates for budgeting. Thank you.
Stavros, do you want to ask that?
For you.
The answer is yes.
Just to get that absolutely right, there's going to be no further discussion of the comparative value of this project compared to the other projects that we're going to be recommending through the LTP planning process and annual planning. If that's the case, it means that every decision for support is going to be automatically added to the budget. And this is a cost-driven approach to budgeting, which doesn't take rates affordability or affordability into account at all by looking at the relative value of these various projects. That's my concern. Thank you.
Any further questions? There appear to be none. I'm going to put the motion that the Tarawera Wastewater Reticulation Scheme, that Council support and agree the proposed Tarawera Wastewater Reticulation Scheme comprising of the installation of low-pressure grinder pumps into each property and a mains pipeline connecting Tarawera to the Okaraka Wastewater Pump Station and hence to the main treatment plant. And 2, that Council agree to instruct officers to commence the process for the installation of the agreed scheme as per the procedure described in section 5.0 of the report RDC 1072983 and regularly report back to Council on progress. Put that motion as one. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? And one abstention. Carried. We move now to recommendation 2, the deliberations on feedback of Rotorua Lakes Council prostitution bylaw statement of proposal. The recommendation that Council agree that the possible negative effects of prostitution are adequately able to be managed via the district plan provisions and other regulatory mechanisms, that a Council agree to revoke the current bylaw following the November Council meeting. Do I have a mover? Councillor Yates. Seconded, Councillor McPherson. Any questions? I'm going to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Recommendation 3, the hearing and deliberations on the proposed revocation of Pururu Reserve North, that Council agree that pursuant to Section 24 of the Reserves Act 1977, the reserve classification of Pururu Reserve North being Part Tariwa 6B Block and Part Tariwa 6C Block be revoked. Do I have a mover? Councillor Maxwell, seconded, Councillor Bentley. Any questions? Comment? Councillor Yates.
Kia ora, and through you, Madam Chair, I'd just like to thank our council on behalf of Mana Whenua for allowing this to go through. Nō reira, tēnā tātou.
Thank you. I'm going to now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. We move now to recommendation 4, Economic Recovery Project 2 to Te Pūtaki o Tawa investment, that Council approve funding of $500,000 from the Economic Recovery Funds allocated in the annual plan for investment into deck and hard shelter area, new trail for the round, the forest loop and trails at Pūtaki o Tawa, Forest Hub 2. Do I have a mover? Councillor Wang, seconder, Councillor Tapsell. Are there any questions? Appear to be none. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? 3 against. Motion is carried. We move now to staff. Yes, it's always recorded. After the vote. We don't mind it being recorded, but if you wish to have it recorded, you must ask before the vote is put, just for future process. We don't mind.
Sorry, I missed the opportunity to comment on this proposal.
Well, the opportunity is too late. Well,
that's tragic. I'm sorry about that.
I asked for questions.
Don't recall.
Comment. Staff reports, page 15. Recommendation, the adoption of Council's annual report. We've got there for the year ended 30th of June 2020. I need a mover and a seconder to receive the report. The mover? Yes, Councillor Yates, seconded Councillor Donaldson. Thank you, Thomas. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Right, Thomas, you're going to overview. Thomas, you're going to review the report for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. Just allow Hilda to bring the presentation up. The audit of the annual report has now been completed. I'll just cover off some housekeeping matters before I get into that usually this occurs in late October, but the government changed legislation to allow the approval of our annual reports to come later. And our audit was delayed at the request of Audit New Zealand due to the pressures that they had on, and so ours moved out a month as a result of the request of Audit New Zealand. In saying that, the year itself was an incredibly difficult year, as we all recall. So from a financial perspective, we had legacy electricity pressures and the pricing of the spot market, which we resolved in December 2019 with regards to entering a 2-year fixed price contract. We saw massive increases in demands on our regulatory and compliance areas, as well as pressures in the parking areas. We brought online the Rotorua wastewater treatment plant and also connected the Rotorua community to that scheme. We had issues pre-COVID, obviously, regarding inner city safety, and responded to that with security patrols, and obviously that has again manifested itself again in our current environment. We received substantial amount of PGF funding, not so much as well, and so much as well, we received an additional $20 million from them, which they brought forward very late in the financial year, and that was the funding that was set aside to support the lakefront, the museum, and the Waka Forest. And at least, by all means, not the most minor issue, is we faced COVID and the lockdown for 5 weeks. Probably in the midst of our construction period, and our communities as a whole ground to a halt, and yet we continued on through that, and as a result we did face pressures to some of our revenues, but as a whole the majority of the organisation and the services we provided continue on during that incredibly difficult time. With regards to the financial performance, therefore, in light of those challenges, our operating result was 4.8 million. It is against a budget of 20, but just recognising that there is a substantial amount of capital subsidies that we hadn't received because of the tying to the capital projects that they were funding, but also we did receive the $20 million from PGF in late June, but we will be recognising that revenue in this following year.
Could you just repeat that? I didn't hear that.
From an accounting perspective, we've received the money in this financial year, but we recognise it as revenue in the following year. It's just a technical aspect of it. Fees and charges themselves were lower, understandable with regards to the 5-week lockdown, followed by the level 2, 3 and 2. And so to end the period, I think at a time where we were forecasting up to a $5 million impact on our revenues, for those fees and charges to only be 1.3 lower was actually a pretty good outcome, and it probably shows the strength of the recovery of our economy during that time. We also received higher financial contributions with regards to subdivisions and resource consents and those sorts of applications, and that's reflective of the demands that were on those services. From an expense pressure point of view, we had to respond to obviously increasing staffing to meet the demands, and also to match our compliance demands as well. We saw higher depreciation costs, which I'll remind council is a non-cash expense that flowed through at the end of the year as a result of revaluing close to half the assets of council, and therefore the depreciation reflects the new values of those assets. We saw a increase in costs on the disposal of assets. The sound shell finally came down as an example of that. But also we drove down our financing costs, and so against budget we saw a $2 million less expense against budget, and that's obviously on the back of the OCR dropping, and just the strategy that we have currently in place with regards to how we finance and manage our debt. So overall they combine to a $4.8 million net surplus, which is quite pleasing in the difficult, challenging times that we had. How does that reflect compared to where we last spoke, probably back in August O&M, where we were talking about a $12.6 million deficit that was slightly behind budget? We obviously include all the capital revenues to produce an operating surplus of about 6.5 million, and then the auditors come in, we do all these non-cash adjustments, which I've got listed there, and so in the end we therefore have that $4.8 million result. So therefore, if you do wish to tie where we talked about before and what's in there, this shows you how we got there. From a capital perspective, the last year was probably the biggest year for us with regards to targeting our capital spend. I think this year is even bigger. And I think with a budget of about 90 million, it was really pleasing to see a $62 million completion. So where we didn't complete was obviously tied to the challenges around the museum, the Performing Arts Centre, which you can now see is well underway, timing around some of the lakefront projects as well, and also the impact of having that 5 to 6 week period of lockdown flowing through. So of that 62 million, 21 million was renewing our existing infrastructure, a very high completion rate. As you can see there on some of our essential life infrastructure, 93% completion of sewerage, 93% of roading, and 99% on water. And again, a good amount spent on our community wellbeing, sport and rec. So those are really the projects on the Waka Forest and the lakefront and sports fields and our reserves. You'll recall as well, we updated a number of our public amenities around the lakes communities as well. And then there was a further 6 million spent ensuring the transformation of our organisation around the One Council ERP transformation and our building and a number of, and the investment also in our pensioner flats. So probably the largest dollar amount completion of capital spend for a significantly long period of time for our organisation. So that was a very good effort too in light of a challenging year. End of year debt and cash, which most people are always interested in. With the receiving of the $20 million from MB very late in the piece, that obviously offset a lot of the borrowings that we had during the year to support the projects. You'll recall as well, post-COVID or during COVID, we talked about the fact that we did go to the market and borrow an additional $20 million to support our organisation during a very uncertain time. And we held that on term deposit for when it was required. We've since now repaid that debt. Obviously that term deposit has matured, but at the time of balance date, we still had that. So where we were at that time was we had borrowings of a $21.5 million increase in borrowings, but that was offset by a $4.8 million increase in cash on hand and a $20 million term deposit. So we actually ended the year $3.3 million better off than what we started the year. As in, our net debt position at the end of the year was $3.3 million less than what we started, which was a fantastic outcome. With regards to some financial covenants, I apologise, this is boring, but some people are interested in this, and questions do get asked. You'll recall our debt limit is 225% of our revenues. Our position was 144%, so well within the limits that were set aside. With regards to the cost of net interest against our total revenue, the maximum we can move in is 20%. We're at 5%, so again, well within the metric that was set. Total net interest costs as a total of annual rates income, again, well within, and from a liquidity perspective, well above the threshold that was required as well. So what it says is obviously from a financial perspective, we are managing our borrowings well. We have plenty of headroom to respond to our community needs, and we had the liquid assets available at that time to respond to the challenges that we saw, in particular around the uncertainty that COVID had. So I guess in summary, I would say an incredibly difficult year, some challenges, very pleasing to produce a positive operating result in that period, recognising that it is short of budget, but that is particularly tied to capital revenues that are tied to capital projects, which were deferred, a high completion of essential infrastructure, and a prudent use of debt. So overall, a very pleasing result. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm sure there will be some questions. Councillor McPherson.
I'm sure you appreciate at least one question through you, Chair. Look, I really appreciate the hard work, the hard slog that you and your colleagues have put in over the last year, and this is a positive operating result. There's no doubt about that at all. I think you might have understated, or would you agree that there's been a slight understatement with regard to the mitigation of pressures? On page 17, you point out these pressures and you've referred to some challenges and some more persistent issues and so on. But then you say the pressures are mitigated by higher rates revenue due to growth in the region. I think it's fair to say, is it not, that the higher rates revenue is due to the 4% increase in rates taken. And secondly, you point out that the mitigation included cost savings and other efficiencies implemented just before the lockdown period. Would you not also agree that it would be fair to say that since the lockdown period there have been unannounced austerity measures, including some organisational rationalisation, some redundancies, there's been some expenditure slowdowns in various areas on some projects, and there's been a wage freeze. These have been unannounced, but they are part and parcel of the mitigation processes that have been used to generate this overall excellent result. Thank you.
So thank you, Councillor. Just one comment, the increase in higher rates is not a response of the increase as you proposed. It's actually collecting more rates as what we planned, so it actually is a reflection of the underlying capital value and change and growth in our community. And yes, some of those, we did obviously take some active measures to manage our costs. I'll just point out though that some of the ones you did measure will fall into this next financial year and have no relevance or impact on this result. But yes, I'll take your feedback on board. Thank you.
Really, it's questions yet at this stage. Are there further questions? Thomas, it's remarkable that there's not. So I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder to the motions that Council resolves to adopt the audited annual report and the audited summary for the Rotorua Lakes Council for the year ended 30th of June 2020, that the Mayor and Chief Executive be authorised to sign the letter of representation and statement of compliance section of the annual report, that the Chief Executive be authorised to make minor editorial changes, if agreed, with Council's auditors, if there are any. Councillor Donaldson? Seconder?
So it's just a point of order.
We're able to comment now.
Thank you. No, it's
sorry,
really...
you had a point of order?
Yes, there's reference to the audit report. I've not seen, but my computing services have collapsed 2 or 3 days ago, so I've not had access to that audit report. So at this stage, I must abstain. So I'm not in a position to vote in favour of this as much as I would want to.
Thomas, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, so in very typical fashion, we have received verbal audit clearance. The actual physical audit report is not actually received until after Council passes this resolution, right. And then we provide initialed copies of the annual report, at which point the auditors give us the audit opinion to put into it. That is normal practice. So unfortunately, I cannot give you a copy of that report because we haven't received it. We have received verbal clearance. The audit director had indicated that he was going to turn up today, but unfortunately he's not here. But that is unfortunate. That is the process that we live with.
So you can still reserve your right to vote with enthusiasm, Councillor McPherson. This is the usual process.
I'll try and keep my enthusiasm under control. But the recommendations, the motion up there does not make direct, it makes direct reference to the audit summary. And so that surely would mean that none of us can actually are in a position to be able to support this as much as we want to be. In typical fashion, the audit summary doesn't actually have to be prepared at the same time. So the summary is, funnily enough, a summary of the annual plan document, which can be prepared a month after the adoption of the annual report. And audit's only purpose in that summary is ensuring that the messaging and the numbers are identical to the annual report. So there is no opportunity to introduce any new information and all those sorts of things. And again, this is very similar to every other year, where all the energy, the focus goes on the annual report and meeting those statutory deadlines. And then once that has been signed off, the organisation works with the auditors in preparing the summary.
Well, I'd like to speak to this. I think it's an outstanding result and a new abnormal environment. We didn't really expect this. You were signalling in the last quarter that we were not going to end up in a positive position, and I think it's astonishing, given the challenges that you have reached a position of 4.8 million positive. I think it's outstanding. And it's due, I have to say, to you, Jeff, and your team, and very prudent management of Council's finances. And well done, everybody. It's also incredible in this year, which has been one of the most difficult, challenging years that we've had, that we have continued to invest in our infrastructure. That is critically important to our people, and have also done the small things that make a big difference in our communities' lives. That also helps our sense of community well-being. The fact that I'm really pleased about, because we've got some rocky times ahead, we can all see financially, we've still got that debt to equity headroom, and that's something that is very reassuring for me to see where that sits at 144%. So I'm quite astonished to receive this, and I congratulate you, Thomas. I hear what a challenging Chief Financial Officer you are, for challenging everything that comes before you, and that's what our ratepayers expect to see. But they also expect to see us continuing to invest to grow the confidence and the growth in our district. So well done to you and your team. Dave? Councillor Donaldson, I mean.
Thank you, Worship. If I could also comment, I echo Councillor McPherson and yourself comments that this is an excellent report, and I also congratulate Jeff and the team on keeping the business going through COVID, through the lockdown, and planning to cushion the blow and come out and build back better, as we agreed to do on Zoom. It's not just about the financial result that the organisation's achieved. It's about those jobs in the construction sector that were enabled through the growth projects being accelerated. Great work by the project management team and the rest of this organisation and support to get those projects back underway after level 4 and keep people employed. And you know, that's been great to see. It's been great to see also the bounce back in domestic tourism, tapering off a bit, but holding up in some areas, and I think we're investing in those areas. I think I detected a wry smile on the Chief Executive's face on the when the issue of the debt to revenue ratio was raised, because in the coming year, when we address major sewage infrastructure projects and the like, that headroom may shrink somewhat. But putting this year to bed, and let's hope we don't have one like it again. I also add my congratulations to the Chief Executive and his team for a job well done.
Is there any other comment? There appear to be none. What a positive annual report. So I'm going to put the motion as 1, because they're all listed there, 2, 3 and 4. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried.
I abstain, please, with enthusiasm.
An enthusiastic abstention I've never heard of, but we're innovative. We note. The next item is deleted, and we move now to 7.3, the schedule of meetings. It's really good to get it at this time in November. Thank you, for the 1st of January to the 31st of December 2021. I need a mover and a seconder to receive the report, that the report schedule of meetings 1st of January to the 31st of December be received. Councillor Kumar, seconded Councillor Bentley. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. It's really great not getting it at the last meeting in December, but can I urge to councillors, it gives you an opportunity to look at those schedules through next year, and I urge you all to take a break. This has been a very, very difficult year for you as political leaders too, and we need to refresh and re-energise ourselves to be good for the public. So look at that schedule of meetings and block out at least 2 weeks in one lump We can't travel internationally yet, but we can get out and explore New Zealand, but you really do need it. It's been a very, very gruelling year for us all. Councillor Maxwell?
Just a question, Madam Mayor. Is it looking encouraging next year for the citizenship ceremonies to return, or we're still waiting on the powers to be to?
We have to wait for the Department of Internal Affairs
But they're
to signal.
indicated then here. Good.
We do miss those events.
Yep.
All right. Is there anything else that needs to be clarified? You've got the times. Councillor Donaldson?
Thank you, Worship. Just a question to you. This schedule of meetings implies that the existing committee structure will remain?
Yes, I can signal now that I think in this really abnormal environment is not the time to change the structure of the committee meetings. We will continue with the two committees of council. I signal that now. Right, so I'm going to put the motion. I need a mover. Councillor Wang, seconded Councillor Kumar. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. I now move, I need a resolution to go into public excluded to consider the confidential minutes of the previous meeting held on the 29th of October and recommendations from the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee, and the reasons are to enable commercial or industrial negotiations. I ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Yates. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. And would you like a 10-minute break or a 5-minute break? Just 5 minutes. Certainly. Well done.